Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, January 24th, 2018. Time for yet another show. Wednesday is here, and as I said in my morning post today, which is running earlier and earlier, I noticed these days, in case you missed it. Wednesday, in case you missed it and you've never listened to the show before, I guess. Wednesday is Joan McCarter Day, and of course, Greg Dworkin back with us for his second appearance this week as well. The day I can lean on the two of them to get us through the 2-hour show. I always appreciate their contributions, and no easier way to get through the show than to be able to listen to and have the privilege to hear these guys join in the conversation, update us on the headlines, keep us organized, tell us what's going on in Washington, D.C., elsewhere, Idaho, for God's sake. You can find out Idaho news here on the Kagro in the Morning Show on Wednesdays anyway, and we like to keep an eye out for Idaho news all the rest of the week too, so we have something fun to throw in there at the end. When we talk to Joan, we're live, we're ready to go. Bill in Portland, Maine is ready to go with us as always. Kagro X, that's me. Joined today by Greg Dworkin, that's who I mentioned, and Joan McCarter, but not Trump because he's still in bed. That's true. I understand he's on his way to Switzerland. Is he going today? Is he on his way there? I don't know. He did tweet something this morning. It was semi-coherent, but on his way to, the Davos, what do they call it? Is it a convention? Is it something bigger and more elite than a convention? I don't know. But apparently there to hobnob with rich people who don't consider him to be an actual rich person, and I don't know what. But he's all excited about the United States economy, which he is boosting one extra copy of Forbes magazine at a time. And the Davos Economic Summit, Justice Putnam chiming in. Thank you very much, Justice. Thanks for waking up so early out there on the West Coast to make sure that all things are plugged in. Of course, on my end, they rarely are. But not only hitting all the right buttons, but filling in the blanks. I appreciate it. Davos Economic Summit. That's bigger than a convention. That's definitely more elite. They will have, undoubtedly, mother of pearl spoons for their caviar. So a good learning experience for Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump is the kind of guy who, goes to Davos, typically. He's not that kind of billionaire, which means the kind of billionaire with $1 billion or more. And I guess he's never been there. Apparently, nobody in his circle really has been there either, which is kind of amazing. I would have thought that maybe Rex Tillerson would have gone. Exxon Mobil CEO. That sounds like a possibility. But I did see a couple of weeks ago that Steve Mnuchin, was Stephen M. Mnuchin, as I like to think of him, was planning on going, and I guess was caught by surprise. Oh, I didn't realize this was a collection of the world's economic elite. And this is a Wall Street titan, although I don't know if he's thought of as a titan by the actual Wall Street titans, but, he's a big deal or whatever, and sitting on a big giant pile of money. So I don't know. Not sure why these guys haven't been alerted to this whole thing where elite people go and scratch one another's backs. But I assume it can only get worse from here on in now that they know about it. And protests in the street ahead of Trump's visit there. Something you're likely to see for the balance of his presidency, however long it may last. And once again, we're crossing our fingers about the possibility of the Mueller investigation getting closer and closer each day. I don't think we should depend on this thing. Don't hold your breath or anything, but it's interesting to watch developments day to day. By the way, let's see, another thing we'll probably want to talk about a little bit with Joan. I see perhaps at Trump's urging, because he gets frustrated when he doesn't win stuff in the Congress, he is, of course, urging the Republicans to do away with the rest of the filibuster tradition. We can't really call it a rule per se, but essentially to use the nuclear option to get all obstacles out of the way. I want no more use of existing cloture rules to delay the various executive nominations that I've made. In other words, no post-cloture time for debate so we can move nominations faster so that I can put more unqualified 24-year-olds who've done nothing in their lives but work on my campaign and maybe even didn't do that into top federal positions. And also to eliminate the legislative filibuster. They are furious that they weren't able to avoid the last very brief shutdown, all of, a weekend, and time to change the rules as far as they're concerned, so that the rest of the budgeting process can be done with a bare majority. It's already the case that you can pass a budget with a bare majority. It's already the case that you can pass a reconciliation bill with a bare majority. They now want to move on and make it impossible to filibuster. I think for starters, the thinking is, Pat Toomey appears to be the guy behind this latest drive, no filibusters on appropriations bills. There's no particular reason to differentiate between appropriations bills and any other kind of bill for the purpose of determining whether or not they'll be subject to filibuster. But I guess the argument is, well, appropriations bills, they deal with money, and so they're very important, and so therefore, blah, blah, blah. But interesting that you would leave the authorization part out of it, too. So basically, right at the anywhere that they can pass money out to themselves or their pet projects, I guess, they want to eliminate the filibuster. I just, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't love it in their hands, but it's something that's, it's a weird holdover from a day long since passed in the Senate. So I'm not objecting to it per se. I am taking note, though, that now that Republicans want it back, of course, it was the nuclear option when Harry Reid was threatening to use it. It was before that the constitutional option when Trent Lott was threatening to use it, and when Bill Frist was threatening to use it. It was the constitutional option. Now since then, in the run-up to the filibuster rules change on judicial nominations and other executive nominations, they insisted again that it was the nuclear option, and then once it was done, it became the Reid rule by way of excusing it and its usage in the Senate. And I now see on Twitter a small trend toward renaming it the constitutional option again, now that they want to make use of it. Oh, we want to use it? It's the freedom rule. It's the USA, Make America Great Again rule. So whatever, we'll keep an eye on it. No sign that there's a serious appetite for using it in the Senate among Republicans, but there are a few voices out there chiming in for it, even from within the institution. Of course, there are also voices chiming in on the secret society out to depose Donald Trump, not take his deposition, but to remove him from office from inside the very highest levels of the FBI, which is law enforcement, and we love because something. If we need to beat up on NFL players, we love those guys. If anything else, we hate them, and they're all corrupt. Anyway, we'll catch up on other headlines because other things are happening. Greg Dworkin is here to help us with that task. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Hi.
You know, what I haven't heard yet, and I know they're getting serious when you start to hear it, is a suggestion for the immigration option. That is to say, let's get rid of the filibuster except on immigration.
Yeah, maybe.
Because this would be the law of unintended consequences. If they actually got rid of the filibuster, it would mean that bipartisan immigration reform passes much easier.
It certainly could if there was no filibuster available anywhere. I mean, it could change other Senate rules, but senators could absolutely make a motion to proceed to a clean consideration of an actual DACA bill.
Which is what McConnell has promised. Yeah, and what would stop them. Exactly.
Which is why they're not going to do it. He promised it. My goodness.
Yeah, but that's how you know they're not serious.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. Lots of moving parts to this, and he's not particularly interested. There's nothing that McConnell has always wanted in his life out of the legislative body that he hasn't gotten So he's got no plans. There's nothing being frustrated by the filibuster for him personally. It's only Donald Trump who says, whatever it is, I want it yesterday, and I'll pay $130,000 to get it. Right.
So in the meantime, there's, I think, two big stories that are actually kind of separate. So, this is the Monty Hall, let's make a deal, door number one, door number two. Do you want to talk about the shutdown and the consequences thereof and the ongoing battle, or do you want to talk about Russia?
We'll probably get to Russia eventually. Let's focus on our country just for a moment. America first, I say. America first.
All right. So Chris Hayes points out on Twitter today, the most powerful faction of the GOP doesn't want protections for dreamers. Since that faction controls the party that controls the government, there will be no protections until that faction or party is dislodged from power. Fancy way of saying some of the things that I was saying today on the Pundit Roundup. For example, here's the deal. When you're in the majority, what you're supposed to do is pass good policy and then use it to get reelected.
Yes, that's the theory.
When you're in the minority, you have to get elected. Then you can pass good policy. And
I'm with
it has to be in that order. So when you're in the minority, there is nothing that you can do that's going to be a huge win. You can't. You're in the minority. So now you have the shutdown. I think Armando's suggestion about what the strategy ought to be is the one that the Democrats eventually took and said, look, we'll get Chip off the table. We'll take the bargaining chip off the table by passing what the Republicans offered. We'll reassess tactical retreat. No way you could look at it as a win. It wasn't, but it was cutting losses as much as possible because you can't win a shutdown. You can't keep the government shut down, and you can't force the majority to do what you're going to do. So they got some minor concessions, very minor, but important ones. And the discussion in the last 48 hours has really been, how important are those discussions? And let me just give you some examples, and I'm going to throw in a nice human interest story.
I'm human. That's great.
Yeah, and so you might be interested.
Right.
So here's Jamie Dupree writing in AJC.com. No easy road to a deal in Congress on DACA, Dreamers, and immigration. And he talks about the fact that, although news organizations are already reporting that he's rescinded an earlier offer to the president, which Democrats said they'd back money for a border wall in exchange for DACA protections, Democrats also acknowledge that to get a bill through the Senate, they'll need 60 votes. And that means they'll have to compromise with Republicans and likely give in on some immigration matters. Again, when you're in the minority, that's how it works. So one uncertainty at this point is how DACA recipients should be dealt with under the bipartisan plan, which has already been rejected by the White House. The Dreamers would have a path to citizenship, but it would take them 12 years to get there. And for a lot of Republicans, especially in the House, any pathway to possible citizenship is a non-starter. As many GOP lawmakers say, will not accept anything that looks like amnesty. So there's a deal to be made, said Scalise, House Republican Whip Steve Scalise of immigration. Scalise. We never know what to do with those E's at the end of names. Good laddie, good lad.
Yeah, that's we'll do it both ways, and that fills more time.
But in my mind, that would not include amnesty. I think it would be a serious mistake for us to pass an amnesty bill providing amnesty and a path to citizenship for millions of people who are here illegally, said Ted Cruz. I think it would be an enormous mistake. I wonder how Ted Cruz feels about Chris Kobach's commission looking at Texas and trying to look at all the Hispanic surnames and just pull them out separately.
Like Cruz.
Like Cruz, for example. That's another story. Under Republican immigration plan has been unveiled in the House, and we talked about this last week, how terrible the House side of the bill, the good lot bill, is. DACA recipients would have no path to citizenship. Instead, they'd be eligible for renewable 3-year legal status to stay in the U.S. and basically be treated as second-class citizens forever.
That sounds fun.
Many Democrats' ideas like that are non-starters as well. So Schumer says he offered that to the president, but on Tuesday the Senate leader made clear the offer was no longer valid for money for the wall. And 2 weeks ago, the president said he was ready to take the heat for lawmakers on immigration, But that changed after the intervention of more conservative Republicans in Congress, specifically Tom Cotton and, of course, Stephen Miller, the Nazi in the White House, and some top White House aides. That would be Stephen Miller, the Nazi in the White House. So the deadline for action set by the president is March 5th. That's a story by Jamie Duprey. Jamie Duprey is an interesting guy. Do you know his story?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it turns out there's this terrific piece here in Politico called "The Radio Reporter Who Lost His Voice But Still Covers Congress."
Okay.
Jamie Duprey was the voice of thousands of people woke up to, and a rare disorder made talking almost impossible. So he's a radio reporter for the Cox Media Group, and he covered Congress for a long, long time. And here's a piece, this piece from Politico mentions what happens now. He can't talk. Whenever he tries to talk, his tongue swells up.
That is unusual. Okay.
Ileana Ross Lehtinen had a plane to catch. The House of Representatives had already called last votes on Thursday. Republican Congresswoman from Miami was hustling to get home when an attendant in the speaker's lobby stopped her. Jamie Duprey asked for an interview, and so she called over to him. Duprey, a 54-year-old radio reporter for the Cox Media Group, materialized out of the crowd, and the two found a quiet corner of the bustling room underneath a glass chandelier. Duprey extended his microphone and pointed at his notebook, where he had written in large red capital letters, "Tax Reform." She gave no hint. She was confused. She said, "It's not a perfect bill," but she'd vote yes. And then Duprey pointed to his next question, which was already written, "CR," referring to the continuing resolution. And Ross Lehtinen explained she was no on the bill because of her commitment to Dreamers. They did an interview that way. He would point to the questions, and then she would just go ahead and answer. And as she turned to go, Duprey attempted to thank you, but his tongue swelled and his throat closed, and he choked on his words, and she just tapped him on the shoulder anyway. And she said, he's somebody who is a household name. Earlier this month, Ross Lehtinen publicized Duprey's plight with a touching tribute on the House floor, highlighting the cruelest of ironies. Duprey's a radio reporter without a voice. So now he writes a blog for AJC and other Cox chain stuff, and he's a really good reporter, and he has one of the more, it's like following Matt Fuller or Steve Dennis or some of the better congressional reporters who tell you what's going on, especially in the House. And it's just a fascinating story about what's happened to him.
Where is this story? I didn't.
I'm going to put it at the end so you could find it. It's just like really, really interesting.
Wow. Okay. That I would say so. I mean, it's funny that you when you brought that up, radio reporters who lost their voice. I mean, I thought of a couple other names, but I mean, this is really completely losing your voice. But
yeah. Charlie Sykes has lost his conservative voice. That's a completely.
I think Mark Knoller kind of has had his voice fail on him, and Diane Rehm, and there's a number, but I mean, wow, that's pretty amazing. I don't know. I expect that there are others who are not quite so helpful as Ileana has been with this, but wow. Well,
basically everybody treats him the same way. They answer his questions, and it's of course it's a whole story about what it was like to do his job.
There it is.
With all of this. He has something called tongue protrusion dystonia, and it turns out it's such a rare condition. There's nobody in the country who actually specializes in it.
Like fixing my Skype, except
more
serious.
For example, right?
Yes.
But anyway, tribute to him, and I think a really nice piece. And he writes good stuff, and so he has that. I'll tell you another reporter who writes good stuff.
Okay.
And that is Walter Shapiro.
Okay.
Who appears on Twitter as Mr. Walter Shapiro, one of the senior reporters.
Oh, really? Well, okay.
He's got an opinion piece on today, which I think pretty much nails what's going on with the whole thing that's going on in the Senate. And that is to say, it's not the Senate that's selling out the Dreamers. The House has always been the problem. And he talks about the Hastert rule and how terrible it is, and basically that's the whole reason why nothing's getting done.
Okay.
Anyone with an ounce of compassion in Congress, regardless of party, should be pressing for immediate statutory protections for the Dreamers. But the congressional leader who should be held responsible for any deportations isn't Schumer or even the devious Mitch McConnell. It's a fellow named Paul Ryan with his gutless plans to adhere to the Hastert rule.
I heard about that guy.
Which, of course, we all have to remember and remind people is named after a child molester.
It is. One of the OG child molesters of the modern era in Congress.
Right. James Hohmann, who writes the Daily 202, he's got one yesterday on the shutdown, and he's got one today, which is very good, on the Russia thing.
Oh.
But yesterday's 7 takeaways from the failed Democratic government shutdown. The big idea here, the resistance will, and this is actually, it's a very good piece. It's pretty fair to both sides. The resistance will struggle when it tries to replicate the tactics of the Tea Party movement. The left learned with its failed shutdown gambit it can't beat Trump by copying the same playbook that the right used against Clinton and Obama, which, by the way, those failed too. Many Republicans, shutdowns always fail. That's really kind of the point. Many Republicans think the federal government isn't just a problem, but a leviathan that needs to be slain. Democrats, in contrast, believe the government is a force for good, and party leaders see it as their solemn duty to deliver services. They see themselves as afflicted, as Hillary Clinton likes to say, with the responsibility gene. That's partly why it took Republicans 2 weeks to cave and Democrats 2 days. Mm-hmm. Ploy failed as vulnerable incumbents and pillars of the party's governing wing got cold feet, forcing leaders to blink. And another side story on that, named Joe Manchin. The doomed to fail strategy was reminiscent of Air America, the radio channel that was created by the left during the George W. Bush era to try to out Limbaugh. Not only can that not be done, it wasn't really what the base wanted. They hated Bush, but lefties are also temperamentally yearn for inclusion, civility, and dialogue.
Okay.
One of the reasons the Obama alumni who host Pod Save America become so popular in the progressive world is they didn't try to mimic Fox or Breitbart. They came up with a new model, which is to be irreverent on the air. You know, Chapo's Trap House kind of does the same thing from a slightly different perspective. And those are the sorts of things that work. So it's clear that Democrats don't trust McConnell. Moderates flex their muscle here, though, and that's really what happened. When you had, I mean, for all of the talk about Democrats have to, grow a pair and stiffen their spine and this, that, and everything, whatever anatomical body part you want to favor.
Yeah, what do you want to grow today?
What do you want to grow today? The fact of the matter is that when Flake and Lindsey Graham decided they were going to vote for reopening the government after discussions with various and sundry people for their own reasons, it took away the bipartisan cover. It may be that Rand Paul and Mike Lee were still left voting no, but, nobody cares about them.
No, that's true.
I mean, it's true. So literally nobody cares about them. So when you lost Flake and when you lost Lindsey Graham, you really were in a very compromised position, and that's part of the reason why Schumer cut his losses as quick as he did. The other backstory is Joe Manchin threatening not to run again if they didn't reopen the government.
He hates it, apparently.
And if he does, and he's running in West Virginia, which is 68% Trump, and he hated it, and his state hated it, and it was bad for him. And McCaskill and Donnelly decided it was bad for them, so that they never voted to close it in the first place. And you had a situation where now Chuck Schumer, remember, what is Chuck Schumer's job? Chuck Schumer's main job is to make sure that the Republicans are in the minority and he becomes majority leader. You can look at that as a personal thing, or you could step back and say his job is to get Democrats elected. So, you have to balance trying to get policy done when it's inevitable that you can't, because the minority can't force the majority what to do, plus the House, and versus trying to get his members elected or reelected in the case of the red state people. So he's in a very tough spot, and that's part of the reason when they say moderates flex their muscles, that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
The House conservatives haven't changed, and they're not going to. And having pulled back and said, okay, let's trust Mr. McConnell at his word, even though we don't, but publicly we'll say that, the dynamic puts Paul Ryan between a rock, which is the establishment, who's trying to get something done because they don't want to lose millennials to the Republican Party forever, like what happened in California with Pete Wilson. There is impetus on this Republican side to get something done. But it's putting him between a rock, which is the establishment that wants that, and a hard place, which is the grassroots, which don't. And then, that comes up with the so-called Hastert rule. So as I've said all along to you, the only way you get any progress here is for the Republicans to break the Hastert rule, and there's a lot of good reasons to do that. They may elect not to. but that's going to be bad for them, and I think it's going to be bad for them in November. But the House is clearly the stumbling block. So now you have Schumer in a situation where he's got eroding fig leaf support from red state Democrats and turncoat Republicans like Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake, and really he had no choice. And at the same time, what's the end game? You can't force Republicans to do anything any more than you can force Trump to sign something. So how long do you keep the government shut for? And at what point do you say, okay, well, this is as much as we could get? If you feel like it's as much as you could get, you might as well fold early.
True, I guess. The game that Schumer has to play, of course, in addition to, wanting to become majority leader, is reflecting the will of his actual caucus. And, sometimes that will is unified and strong, and sometimes it's not. And when you're playing with, 49, keeping things on an even keel and making sure that you're representing all. That's both a difficult number to handle because it's nearly a majority, but you don't have any of the power of the majority. And sometimes it's simpler from the minority point of view. When things are cut and dry, it's an easy job, but it's so rarely cut and dried. You lose a few votes here and there, and you have to back off. That's just the way it is, and it's the way that the caucus wants it. They want cover for turning around and changing direction, and Schumer's the guy whose job it is to take that heat.
Right. I mean, sometimes you lose. Yeah. So, and
we're about 30 seconds from our next break, by the way. Just wanted to let you know, since the music is so difficult to get through to you.
Right, and I won't go on forever after the break. But after the break, we'll look a little bit about who says the Democrats did okay with this, and then we'll also then start to look about the Russia thing.
Okay. Well,
which I think is going to be the bigger story going forward.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, in that case, let's entertain that after this short break. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. At a slightly different point in our music. I started it a little late today, but we are back. The time is what it is. We can't change that. Greg Dworkin's still with us. Thankfully, that hasn't changed either. When we last left off, probably Armando was wrong, but I wasn't. We didn't get to that yet, but that was going to happen. We were in the middle of discussing. What? Where was I again? Oh, yes.
Right. We're talking about the shutdown, right?
Yes.
Kagro in the morning and the shutdown and how people felt about it. David Leonhardt had an opinion piece, a newer one. He'd written a couple of others. David Leonhardt, deep breath, the Democrats did just fine.
Okay.
Right? In the end, he says, I think a long shutdown was more likely to hurt the Dreamers than help them. Congress would not have passed a law to protect them before reopening the government, and the Dreamers' allies in Congress would be in a weaker position than they are now. That said, the critics' disappointment stems from a profoundly decent instinct. They're worried about Dreamers being ripped from their lives in this country. I share the worry and the anger at Republican leaders who refuse to solve this problem. But it's just not the case that a minority party can force the majority party to do what it wants if only it summons enough righteous anger. It never has been. It's another version of the Green Lantern theory of politics. If you care enough and try hard enough, you can do anything. The best hope for the Dreamers was not a shutdown that was somehow supposed to end differently from every other recent shutdown. The best hope, first, is to see if there's a solution over the next few weeks away from the chaos and heat of a shuttered federal government. In other words, if Schumer says to McConnell, you guys have to do something about the Dreamers or you're going to lose millennials forever, that might be something that McConnell might react to.
Okay.
And then Leonard goes on to write, if that doesn't work, there's only one reliable way to change a policy that the majority party won't change. Turn that party into the minority party. And that's where November comes in.
Okay. Well, I'm for that.
Right? Nate Silver weighs in. It's been a big nothing burger. Democrats started out with a public opinion edge, but it was deteriorating, and their tactics weren't well thought out. They settled for 30 cents on the dollar, but that's about what the position was worth. None of it's likely to matter in November. Okay. And Hans Noel, who wrote The Party Decides, big important book, co-wrote, a political science guy. And most of political science guys are pretty much in alignment with Noel. If your shutdown takes fixate on selling out, you might not understand what bargaining is. If it takes fixate on making a deal, you might not understand that something of substance is being bargained over. That's Trump's problem every time he talks about deals. He's more interested in the deal than he is in the substance. That's true. A problem. And then Noel says, if your shutdown takes fixate on optics, you might not understand it's only January.
Okay. Well, that's true, too. That's a good point. I mean, it is an awful long way out to be overly concerned with optics and what people are going to see when they vote in November.
If you look at the headlines and you turn on cable, it's yesterday's news. Today, people are already moving on to what's going on with the Russia stuff.
Yes, we are back on Russia and a couple of other stories. That's true. And I guess we have people like Ron Johnson out there insisting a corollary to the Russia story. Even the Republicans are back on Russia. It didn't happen, and it's all a big conspiracy, is their version of it. But
I sent you a lot of stuff, so because I sent you so much stuff, I'm going to just put this at the bottom so you can find it easy.
All right.
This is a piece from New York Magazine, All the While Russia Probe Developments You May Have Missed. Okay. The Saturday Night Massacre that wasn't. That's where Jeff Sessions had been pressuring Christopher Wray, who's the FBI director, to fire Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Wray refused. McCabe is still there. Trump inquired about McCabe's loyalty. He wanted to know who McCabe voted for.
Yes.
Wray cleans house anyway. And he's not taking staffing suggestions in the White House, but he's making some personnel changes. Chief of Staff is taking a job in the private sector. Dana Boente will be the FBI's next general counsel. Yes. He was a longtime federal prosecutor from another Trump scandal, replacing acting Attorney General Sally Yates. Sessions talked with Mueller. Comey talked with Mueller. Mueller wants to talk with Trump. Rick Gates, who works for Paul Manafort, appears to be ready to flip. Peter Strzok assumed Trump was innocent, and for some reason that's bad because basically he said, I don't understand why we're even going there, but whatever. And he's the guy that's supposed to be the secret cabal that's trying to get rid of Trump.
Yeah. Good job.
So, and by the way, nobody cares about the Russia story according to the White House.
Yes, and also he never, ever, ever in a million years pressured Wray to fire.
Right. So that's all the stuff that happened in just the last couple of days, and because of the shutdown, didn't get all that much publicity. So today's Daily 202 is about Russia, and it says public opinion is protecting Mueller's investigation for now.
Okay.
It's basically about a lot of different things, but the big idea, he always starts with the big idea. The big idea is that people Robert Mueller's team is talking to and the questions they're asking suggest that the special counsel is keenly interested in whether President Trump sought to obstruct justice. Consider these 6 stories that broke in the last 24 hours. Mueller's seeking to question Trump in the coming weeks about his decision to oust Mike Flynn and Comey. Okay. Trump asked the acting director of the FBI how he voted.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
He asked Andrew McCabe a pointed question, who'd you vote for? McCabe was very upset about that, by the way.
Yeah, and he said he didn't vote, by the way.
And again, Sessions was interviewed by counsel last week. The special counsel's office briefly interviewed Comey months ago. NBC reports this morning that Mueller's team has also spoken with Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates, NSA Director Mike Rogers, and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. So they're all checking these stories against each other to see if they're consistent. It's got the Rick Gates thing who turned, and White House Press Secretary Huckabee Sanders was noncommittal when asked yesterday whether Trump would submit to an interview. even as she reiterated that we're going to be fully cooperative and insisted the president had done nothing wrong. And then she made perhaps an unintentionally revealing comment. Pressed during the afternoon briefing on why Trump doesn't fire Mueller if he still believes his investigation is a witch hunt, she said, I think we all know what everybody in this room would do if the president did that. I don't think that's helpful.
That's true.
The answer was a rare nod to the degree in which public opinion and the fear of political blowback protects Mueller from being fired more than respect for the rule of law.
Okay.
And poll yesterday said that 78% of Americans think Trump ought to testify under oath if asked to by Mueller, including 59% majority of Republicans. And 75% of independents. And I will tell you, I got another piece we may not get to by a Republican analyst, David Winston, looking at both Virginia and Alabama wins for the Democrats, and basically makes the case it's got nothing to do with either base. It has everything to do with independence. If you win independence, you win elections. And so I totally agree with that. Each base isn't large enough to win. You have to convince other people. And if 75% of independents think that Trump ought to testify under oath, that kind of settles it as far as what the public thinks.
Okay. I mean, for the time being, I will accept that because it sounds good for us.
So in this context,
all right.
It's the only way to analyze things, right? Is it good for us or not?
Yes, there you go.
Well, I'm objective about it because it's very good for us. In this context, the escalating efforts by Trump's allies on Capitol Hill to undermine the Mueller investigation and impugn the integrity of career law enforcement professionals should be viewed, at least in part, as a partisan plot to move the needle of public opinion, especially on the right, with the goal of giving air cover for Trump to potentially stop cooperating with the special counsel or perhaps even take more drastic steps. That's why you have to put Ron Johnson's released more text messages yesterday that were exchanged between FBI employees Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. In them, Strzok notes his suspicion that Mueller's probe would not lead to major revelations. He was later removed because he reflected anti-Trump bias. He considered never joining the probe at all because of a gut sense and concern there's no there. In one message, Strzok appears to wonder whether the Trump probe could be an investigation leading to impeachment before guessing that the odds are nothing truly bombastic will result from the case. He also texted Page. He feels a sense of unfinished business over having unleashed the investigation into Clinton's emails. Now we need to fix it and finish it, he added. Trump's allies are even now seeking to discredit the infamous Steele dossier by falsely linking it to John Kerry's State Department.
Okay, sure.
There are some.
Why?
Of course, I think Sean Hannity is going with, and Alex Jones are going with the idea that the new made-up memo that Devin Nunes is concocting in the House Intelligence Committee is some big reveal that's going to change everything. So 50% approve of the way Mueller's handling the investigation, down from 58% in November, according to a new ABC Post poll. Frankly, that just may be because we haven't seen any results yet.
Could be. People are impatient. They want a public option. That's what it is.
That is absolutely right. The CNN poll found that 3 in 4 Republicans now believe the investigation is mainly an effort to discredit the Trump presidency. We'll see what they say when the actual results come out.
Well, it is that, but by way of, saving the republic.
Right. And Senate GOP leaders have also put the kibosh on bipartisan legislation that would protect Mueller, apparently fearful of incurring Trump's wrath and thus undermining their agenda. I would add, that effort would be harder to do if there were no filibuster.
True.
I mean, the law of unintended consequences about just getting rid of everything says to me that they're not going there. It's just talk.
Yeah, very likely. Even just the motivation really is not there. There's nothing on the table that the people who need to be behind such a decision feel like they're missing out on.
Make everything just a 51% vote. Make the whole process of impeachment easier to do. Let's do it.
Right. Why not? Well, that, of course, would require a bigger change, constitutional change. But
No, not the number of votes, but the process leading up to it.
Oh, yeah. Like
investigations, sense of the Senate, all the other things that you might want to do before you actually get to a vote. If that's all 51%, it's easier to do. Sure.
That's true, too. Well, we could just put yes, no in canisters and pick one.
I suppose. So anyway, that's behind all of the news that's really pushing all of that today. And there's some other stuff out there which is kind of semi-interesting. I don't know if it's interesting to you, but for example, Franklin Graham saying that, basically Trump, we're fine with Trump.
Yeah, he gets a mulligan on that. Now, he took that mulligan at the Beverly Hills Hotel, but we'll get another one.
Yeah, it all starts from now. Dan Dresner had a really nice piece here. This one trick explains the pattern of conservative praise for Trump's first year.
Yeah,
really
liberals hate him.
Well, actually, it comes from a tweet by Scott Lincecum. Interesting to see a lot of conservative culture warriors defend Trump's first year, like Franklin Graham, for example, on policy grounds. And conservative wonks criticize it on cultural institutional grounds.
Okay.
So Lincecum's deeper point, the Trump year's policy accomplishments have been wildly oversold.
Yes.
But I wouldn't expect the culture warriors to grok that nuance.
I see.
The more I think about it, the more I'm convinced Lincecum is correct. That is not to say that social conservatives are wrong to think Trump hasn't served them well. He has. On the tax cut leading to massive repatriation, wonks and economists have already noted this doesn't really have much of an economic effect. As for the overall tax bill, conservative tax experts are fans of the corporate tax cut, but not much else. And the process was abysmal. And the same story can be told about deregulation. And as foreign policy, you can take my word for it, or Tom Nichols, or Melvin Loeffler, or Elizabeth Saunders, the conclusion is the same. The only aspect of foreign policy the president has excelled at has been the globalization of America's cultural fissures, which is another thing that likely pleases social conservatives but puts off actual foreign policy wonks. So all of this is consistent with assessments that Trump's first year, even from a conservative perspective, has been pretty mediocre. What Trump has been great at is venting his spleen. When he does so on issues near and dear to social conservatives, they're understandably happy, and to some extent they should be. But beyond the base, no one's terribly impressed with the president's first year in office, and meanwhile, the moral price that social conservatives are paying for their fealty seems high. And then they have Tony Perkins, who's the one who said Trump gets a mulligan on an alleged affair because it was 10 years ago, and evangelicals understand what a second chance means.
Sure. So does Trump.
Right. So Dresner says, this is normally the moment when the hardworking staff here writes a conclusion, but for today, I'll outsource that to my colleague Mike Gerson. Gerson says, the level of cynicism here is startling. Some Christian leaders are surrendering the idea that character matters in public life in direct exchange for political benefits to Christians themselves. It's a political maneuver indistinguishable from those performed by business or union lobbyists every day, only seedier. You scratch my back, I'll wink at dehumanization and Stormy Daniels. The gag reflex is entirely gone. From a purely political perspective, Gerson writes, the Trump evangelicals are out of the depth. So, all of this, what do you do about it? Again, you go back to what we talked about in terms of the shutdown. If you really want to do something about it, if you're unhappy with Schumer or Manchin or Trump or Ryan or anybody else, go vote in November. It is the only way you're really going to change things in a dramatic way, and everything else is just a build up to that. And that's how I'm going to end my segment for today, because I think I'm right about that.
Okay. You're just daring Armando now.
Yeah, well, right. Come on the show, Armando, and tell me I'm wrong. And if you can't, maybe John can come on and tell me I'm right.
That could happen, and we'll look forward to that in the next hour.
Yeah, we tend not to overlap just because I got to get off to work, and she's got to get up at an ungodly hour out there in Iowa or wherever she's from in order to get on the show.
Come on.
So, we love talking to each other. I mean, all of us have known each other for a very long time, and the whole point about this show is like we get to talk to our friends,
Yes, and
so say hi.
That's what makes it
That's
fun.
a long way of just saying hi, John.
There you are.
I know you're from. Oh, I know that.
She's listening to get ready.
I'm just saying that, when you go to the North End in Boston, you go to the farmer's market, what they're selling there is Maine potatoes.
Really? Is that how they say it?
Potatoes. We got potatoes here, fresh from Maine.
Potatoes. Okay.
Potatoes. We got potatoes.
Thanks for the potatoes, Bill.
They're never from Idaho. They're always from Maine.
That is, okay. You're missing out. They're good. They're good. I guess they say potatoes.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'll see you tomorrow, and have a great rest of the day, folks.
We'll try and do that. Thanks very much, Greg. Good start. We'll take that and run. I appreciate it. And let's see. All right, where to check in on all this? This reminds me of a number of things that I have put aside for some discussion. Trying to think here. What would make the most sense? Well, first of all, I do want to just take note of the fact that we are, once again, living under the cloud of, in this case, not living in particular fashion, under the cloud of another shooting event. That is to say, another shooting event, a school shooting, which should be occupying our minds and our time today, is not, because yawn, another school shooting. I mean, we've actually gotten to that point, and everybody taking note of it on Twitter. And I think last night I did see a headline fly by that someone had tweeted out with the note of, oh my gosh, it's a heck of a headline. Here's where we are now. Bill Gruskin, the journalist from Colorado Springs, who works, I guess, let's see, where is he now? Here's his whole Twitter bio. Via Colorado Springs, Palo Alto, Rome, Standing Rock, Tampa Tribune, Miami Herald, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg News, and now at the Columbia Journalism Review, pointing out the, looks like, New York Times font headline here. Kentucky school shooting is 11th of year. It's January 23rd. That is all in the headline from Alan Blinder and Daniel Victor. And you likely didn't realize it. I certainly didn't, and I follow the shooting situations pretty closely. 11th school shooting of the year. Of course, that's usually argued about or disputed in some way by the gun enthusiasts who say it shouldn't count as a school shooting if some kid accidentally or intentionally brings a gun to the school in their backpack and they drop their backpack and the gun goes off and the bullet ricochets off the floor and fragments of the tile from the floor and maybe shrapnel from a ricocheted bullet graze someone's shin. That's not a school shooting because it only was an injury caused by a firearm that took place in a school. That's not enough to make it a school shooting. They very often dispute these things. But this was rather undoubtedly your basic traditional school shooting. Kid comes to school with gun and shoots a bunch of people and kills 2 of them. This is in Paducah, Kentucky. I'll just grab the most immediate Google News headline, this one being from USA Today. The headline reading, sister of Paducah, Kentucky shooting victim, quote, I couldn't believe this could happen again. Now, it's one of 2 flavors of usual headlines. It's we very often get the I can't believe this could happen here, which is to say this small, close-knit community where everybody is swimming in guns. Or, sometimes people say, I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it could happen in my neighborhood. I never thought this or that. Or occasionally, hey, this happens every other week. But I didn't think it would happen again. Paducah has had school shootings in the past. And some of them rather prominent in the ongoing list of school shootings. Let's take a look here at this particular entry here from USA Today. The school shooting in Kentucky's Marshall County on Tuesday morning took Christina Hadley Elligood's breath away. 21 years and 1 month ago, her younger sister, Nicole, was one of 3 students killed at Heath High School in Paducah, Kentucky, when 14-year-old Michael Carneal, or Carneal, I don't know how he said his name, but I don't know if that makes a difference, when he opened fire on students standing in a prayer circle. That's the shooting I was thinking of. I don't believe this could happen to our small community again, said Elligood, and it's hard to believe, but not that hard, really, when you think about it. She's now 36 and a paralegal in Paducah. I was totally shocked. I told my boss it had to be a joke. Elligood, who helped raise money to erect a memorial to the Heath victims last month, said she has reached out to those responding to Tuesday's shooting to offer her help. I have people from Heath on standby, she said. We know what these people are going through more than anyone else. On December 1st, 1997, Carneal wrapped a shotgun and a rifle in a blanket and took them to school, passing them off as an art project. He also carried a loaded pistol in his backpack. When he arrived, he inserted earplugs, guarding his hearing, that's important, took the pistol from his bag, firing into the prayer group. Nicole, Jessica, James, and Casey Steger were killed instantly. Students Missy Jenkins, Shelley Scheiberg, Kelly Hard-Alsip, Holland Holm, and Craig Keene also struck by gunfire, but survived. Missy Jenkins Smith, as she's known now, has had to use a wheelchair since that day. Before Heath High, school shootings were rare in the United States. Isn't that an amazing thing to think about? Carneal is currently serving a sentence of life without parole for 25 years at the Kentucky State Reformatory. Heath High School, about a 35-mile drive from Marshall County High School, is now a middle school. Ellie Good organized a service last month to mark the 20th anniversary of the shootings, and for a ribbon cutting, Donald Trump loves ribbon cuttings, but he wasn't there, for a new memorial across the street from the school. The memorial was built in the shape of a circle in remembrance of the circle of students shot that day. 5 benches inside the memorial represent the 5 surviving victims. I can't believe this happened again, so close to home, said Ellie Good, who was 19 months older than her sister. Carneal, who pleaded guilty but mentally ill to murder and attempted murder, later told a reporter he couldn't give a single explanation for his crimes. He said contributing factors included, or rather, I guess he's a single explanation for his crimes. He said contributing factors included his mistaken belief that his parents didn't love him and taunting from other students, including some who falsely claimed he was gay. Yeah, we were still having a problem with that, and we still are. People want one simple answer. I can't give it, he said in a 2002 interview. He said he never looked at who he was shooting and didn't know who they were until he read it in the paper. He also said he blamed himself for subsequent school shootings around the country, especially the 1999 attack at Columbine High School, in which 13 people were killed and 23 wounded. How interesting that he would even stop to think about that. That, I guess, is a good sign, if you're looking for one. He said he felt so guilty about possibly inspiring that crime that he attempted suicide several times. I thought if I killed myself, I would make the world a better place. I don't think that's actually necessarily the case. But he said he realized he couldn't change anything by dying or anything else. I wish I could change things, but I can't. I can't imagine that the news of his suicide would dissuade other people similarly disturbed, since so many of these, a lot of these school shootings do end in suicide anyway. It's sad news. Sadder still that the president has made no mention of it, but that's because so far they can't pin it on Islamic extremism, and so he's just therefore not particularly interested in the story. But I thought it was of course, a story worth noting, and perhaps even more to the point, worth noting that it took us so long to note it. It's rather an amazing situation that we find ourselves in. The shooting continues unabated. I am trying desperately to catch up with documenting the various gun fails from around the country and get back on track so that I can bring you more real-time updates on that. But, the world has been very, very crazy of late, and there's been a lot to catch up on. And not possible to do it all like Hope Hicks, for instance. Speaking of Hope Hicks, this is just, I guess we'll make a quick throwaway mention of this, but I've been keeping an eye on things with my regular Twitter correspondent pals out there this morning, and Der Wouter Vanderhorst, always digging into the Trump situation, has thrown an interesting curveball at us. I haven't heard this one, and it's a name we might as well enter into the record and just see where things shake out. I got no basis whatsoever for evaluating what's being hinted at here, but I don't know. I feel like there's something to this. He tweeted me a very interesting screenshot that he took from Instagram here. Some have observed, he said, Trump is very close to Trump real estate salesperson Katrina Campins. Anybody ever heard of Katrina Campins? She has a very much Instagrammed child named Pharaoh. That is an interesting name to give your child. Really, honestly, no matter where you're coming from, that's an interesting choice. But people are into creative baby names. That's not a creative baby name. That's just a plain weird one. And here is an Instagram photo of Katrina taking a selfie with Donald Trump in the background. It's not clear where they are, but this appears to be a current photo of him, and apparently they are rather close, and no one knows why. I have heard nothing about her. But then he followed up with another note that there was a very unorthodox baby shower at the White House, hosted by Omarosa before she left. She also took the liberty of having her own bridal shower, Omarosa did, at the White House. She mainly used it, I guess, as a party venue, which may or may not have had something to do with her eventual departure. By the way, is she finally off the books at this point? I forget what her termination date was. She was taken off and basically, escorted out of the building and handed a box full of her belongings early in January, but I think she was supposed to stay on the payroll through maybe the end of this month. Anyway, weird bit here. Unorthodox baby shower at the White House hosted by Omarosa for Katrina Campins recently, apparently. And although we are coming up against our break, I thought I might take a look at this one. Omarosa hosts baby shower for former Apprentice star. I guess she was on The Apprentice and ended up being a salesperson for Trump condos, perhaps as a result. Did she win? Is that what you won? A job selling condos? What a great scam The Apprentice was. Now that I think about it. Anyway, I'll skim this one over the break and see if there's anything worth pulling out here. But I don't know. That seems like a very odd situation, and you never know where this one's going to shake out. Then we'll turn our attention back to stuff that actually matters. Although who knows what this guy is going to end up hanging his hat on and sealing his case. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Turn down our music after our short top of the hour break. This is a weird story. I mean, I don't know that it bears on anything. It's just sort of out there. And there is another story that I guess fits in the same genre that's from Greg's Roundup. So I'll blame Greg for this one. It's not his story, of course. But we can weave a narrative, perhaps, of some sort out of this. Omarosa hosts baby shower for former Apprentice star at the White House. Mark Moore is the name of the writer for this New York Post piece from July of this past year. And I guess I'm mostly intrigued by the fact that this thing happened and nobody seemed to have noticed. And, why would there be something like this for this person? She doesn't work in the White House. How, why would this be approved? And I think this maybe it's nothing more than it fits under, why was Michael Wolff granted access to the White House to write his book and nobody ever questioned him? And, one of the big stories was, I don't know, I got somebody's approval and I walked in there, and then after that, nobody asked any questions. Because, hell, anything could be going on in this idiot's White House, including baby showers for these, apprentice contestants. Here's the story. It's illustrated by an Instagram posted video, once again, entirely composed of selfies, and this woman who's deeply, deeply in love with herself, videoing herself talking about her big day. Full day at the White House today, she comments underneath, my baby shower at the White House today, hosted by Omarosa. Big healthcare vote, press conferences, and more, and including in this the addresses: Real Donald Trump, POTUS, DJ Trump, and White House as well. I don't know whether was this I can't tell whether from the picture whether it's Instagram or Twitter, but she's using Twitter handles, but they're very similar. So anyway, here's the story. They turned the White House baby blue. It says Omarosa Manigault, an aide to President Trump's and to Trump, and former contestant on The Apprentice, held a baby shower replete with blue balloons for a friend in the White House on Tuesday, and they appeared to have the run of the place. Again, this may have absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump himself or any policymakers or anything. It's one of those things, one of those stories like, guys, it's the White House. What are you doing? It's not just a private party venue for Omarosa. And I really don't know whether that's what led to her dismissal. But anyway, it took a hell of a long time if that was it. So that's it. They appeared to have the run of the place. Katrina Campins, who was on the first season of The Apprentice in 2004, was invited to celebrate her baby shower with Manigault in the White House. And then there's oh yes, it was a Twitter post, full day at the White House today. It's got a little video. I have no idea whether, I'm sure it's not worth playing, but anyway, I'm sure it's just her saying, I'm having a big day at the White House. I'm having a baby shower, everybody. We'll see. But you might have a very interesting voice. Could be very gravelly. I doubt that very much. Anyway, full day at the White House today, baby shower, hosted by Omarosa, yada, yada. Campins gushed on Twitter on Tuesday of that week. The two former Apprentice stars also posed at a table with a beaming Manigault, holding aloft a balloon depicting a stork and the words, "It's a boy." How exciting. The two also kept the color theme in their dresses, with Campins in light blue and Manigault in dark blue. What news? Photos of Campins' Twitter are on her Twitter and Instagram accounts, show her reading what appears to be a card next to a black gift bag marked "The White House" that included the seal of the President of the United States and hugging White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Oh, so she involved herself in this as well. Another photo shows Campins, who is a, quote, luxury real estate specialist, unquote, in Miami for Trump International Realty, according to its website, standing at the lectern in the West Wing's press room. They really did have the run of the place. She even got to peek in, misspelled using the P-E-A-K spelling, she even got to peek in on the Oval Office meeting between Trump and Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri, and posted a video on Instagram of the two leaders' press briefing later in the Rose Garden. In the Oval Office today, her Instagram account said. So, no, hot, juicy gossip from the New York Post thing here, but it's kind of a weird habit, a weird thing going on at the White House that they just don't seem to have. They seem to have no security measures whatsoever and no sense of propriety in terms of admitting various weirdos to the White House just for their ability to then brag about having parties at the White House. Lots of people responding to Wooter's prompting here. The Sea Farmer, interestingly enough, tweeting that this person, Campins, is quite the salesperson, currently listing a $39 million property that had previously sold for $7 million down there in Miami. That is super duper luxurious, I guess. It's kind of a weird situation. No doubt about it. Oh, okay. Actually, that was Werder's own tweet here, I guess, being retweeted by the Sea Farmers. You snuck in there for some credit due elsewhere, Sea Farmer, but I was glad you enjoyed the thing. And what a nice name, the Sea Farmer. It's an odd situation. I don't know if it means anything. I don't know if it leads to anything. It's just, normally, I guess, with the normal White House, you would say that could not likely have happened without somebody's knowledge and okay. And maybe it's the president's. But quite honestly, in this White House, I don't know. I don't know if I could actually make that argument. I think he may have no idea whatsoever what's going on in that place. Anyway, there are far more relevant stories out there, but occasionally it pays. In a couple days, she'll start making the news, and it'll turn out that he met her at the Beverly Hills Hotel and asked her to spank him with the fake Time magazine, and everyone will say, I heard it first there. But I don't think I get any prize for that as far as I am aware. Now, I did mention that there was something else in Greg's raft of stories that was related or relatable, at least to all of this. a New Republic piece illustrated by a photo of a beaming Trump being photographed with a pouting, and I would venture to say even possibly scantily clad Melania Trump, doing her very best pouty blue steel sort of thing there. It's actually, I think, a low-cut dress that she's wearing, but it's rather revealing, and the material is porous, let's say. And it's a Jeet Heer piece, and you know it's important because Jeet Heer only discusses those things on the internet which are of great importance. I think it was like maybe midweek last week I was amazed to find that he was busying himself lecturing people about what was and wasn't important about something. And it might even have been nonsense like the Stormy Daniels story. And you're all paying attention. You're all being distracted. And this week he's running articles with pictures of Trump and Melania and someone else. I don't know who else is in this picture here, but they are in front of a Playboy magazine backdrop, and so I'm going to venture a guess and say this is a Playboy model of one type or another. I don't know are there more than one type? The naked type is probably the kind we're talking about here. She's, appears to be in every respect typical of the genre, let's say, clothed or not. This piece titled "The Triumph of Porn Over Social Conservatism." By the way, you could probably write the same article about the triumph of weed over social conservatism and do just as well. This subtitled "Why Trump's Alleged Affairs with Erotic Stars," that's multiple, aren't hurting him on the right. And I guess if you think about it, the photographs we've seen of Melania from her early modeling career, I guess she could be the plural. I mean, as odd as the story is between Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels, is there another way to characterize Melania's career other than, well, she might not be a star, but erotic stars? Everybody gets the star label in porn. It's your first movie, you're a porn star. That's just the way we talk about those things. Uh-oh, seriousness about to occur. Joan McCarter calling in. Good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning, Kagro.
It's a great place to switch gears, I think, to be perfectly honest.
Talking about porn stars, if you like.
Let's not characterize it that way, necessarily. I'm just saying these things are in the news. I don't want to...
in the news and shockingly not.
Right. Both in the news and not.
Politico had a thing over the weekend about it being the anniversary of the Lewinsky Clinton.
Okay.
20 years, and we're still talking about that.
Yes.
We've got
and
Trump campaign payoffs to a porn star the month before the election, and okay, whatever.
Yeah, but we're all used to that now with Donald Trump, and I mean, I guess we kind of are. I was just sort of musing over it was also, by the way, over the weekend somebody noted the 13th wedding anniversary, Donald and Melania's. So it was reported in the papers, low key.
Did you see his romantic tweet to her yesterday, congratulating her?
No, I didn't. What
something to the effect of, "It was a great decision I made."
What a great deal.
I made a great decision there.
Good, yeah. Usually you want to credit that to her and say, thank her kindly for making that decision, but okay. I was all, here I was playing the traditional role of, American observer, finding out that some famous guy had an affair with a porn star while his wife had just, Barron was about 4 months old at the time, and everybody, emphasizing that and how awful it is, and it isn't nice. Obviously, but as I'm reading through the beginning of this article here and thinking, as Jeet here puts it, why Trump's alleged affairs, plural, with erotic stars, plural, aren't hurting him on the right. And I mean, one, there's the hypocrisy of the conservative right. But on the other hand, I guess maybe we're all used to it because, well, he married one of the erotic stars he was having an affair with.
That's redemption.
Yeah, I mean, now she's the first lady now, but I mean, it wasn't like you didn't meet her at Mensa, is what I'm saying. She may very well be a member. He's not, but it's the kind of place that he would ordinarily brag he was meeting people, perhaps. But I guess maybe that's part of it. He has moved from model to model to model. And he marries them. That's the ones he marries. So I guess we're not shocked by it in the same way. But porn star, that does carry a big wallop. That's a label you don't want to get hung on you if you're looking to be taken seriously outside of that business. I think.
It's. I have an anecdote from out here in Heartland America from a Trump supporter.
Oh, okay.
Third hand. My mother's physical therapist's mother.
Okay.
Who's a fundamentalist Christian and a Trump supporter. According to her, fundamentalists supported Trump because they think he'll bring on the rapture.
Oh. Well, that's a theory. So, I mean, like, as the Antichrist himself, or just
I have no idea that they're okay with whatever, because...
All right. Well, I suppose if that's what you're banking on, it wouldn't matter much one way or the other. Although you could say, I don't care that he's a horrible, horrible person. We're going to have, the rapture. Well, that would be something for me to take into the rapture with me. Thank you for conceding that point. Now that the world is ending, I appreciate that.
The evidence for it so far isn't bad. I mean, just look at the natural disasters of the past year.
There have been some weird ones.
Humongous. I mean, I really do think Donald Trump's going to bring on the Yellowstone caldera explosion.
It may be biggest explosion in history. Thank you.
Which then we won't be particularly caring that much about Donald Trump. But...
Yeah, that may be. But, yeah, all right. Well, I guess that's a theory that's out there, too. Right alongside, he gets a mulligan.
Yeah.
19, 20 mulligans. And that he takes that mulligan very much in the way he does when he plays actual golf, I guess. He's just sort of, I get a mulligan on everything, essentially. Yeah. Well, all right. They're getting what they want out of it.
He's well aware of it. Back to that I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. And
that is true.
They wouldn't care. They wouldn't.
That, he's maybe the one thing that he's read correctly in all of this. So that's pretty sad.
Actually, I have two anecdotes from Heartland Red State America. Another is a gun fail.
Okay. Well,
hit kind of close to home this weekend.
Did it? All right. Sure.
I grew up in a tiny, tiny, tiny town. There were less than 100 students in the grade school, I think, when I was there.
Okay.
One of them was shot by cops this weekend when they were responding to a domestic dispute. And she was standing out in the road with her rifle and wouldn't put it down.
Was she complaining of, was she being victimized in the home and was defending herself?
We don't know about the domestic situation. I do know that she's had some mental stability issues in the past several years. She's dead now.
Yeah, well, that's
because the response to a mentally ill person holding a gun is to shoot them.
Yeah.
Because a mentally ill person has a gun.
Right. Well, yeah, and then of course if you don't do it, then people wonder, if something happens, they wonder, why didn't you? But I mean, in a small town setting, I suppose there's not that much that can happen. There's not, for instance, overlooking a music festival in Las Vegas.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. This is somebody that you went to school with.
Yeah. Wow. She was in the class below me. And, we had classes of, I think I had, the high point in my class was 20 kids.
So yeah,
most of the time it was around 13. Her class would have been the same size. Everybody knew everybody. She was on her bus route. All of her family.
She living in the same
brother
town?
Kent. No, she was in the next big town over. Big town being, I don't know, 1,000 people, 1,500.
Yeah. Somebody doesn't know somebody else in that town.
Yeah.
That's how big it is. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, was she know? Who knows? I guess there's probably just not enough information now. I guess she was not known to the cops, or maybe at that point they didn't care, but
she's needlessly dead is all I know.
Right. Well, I am sorry to hear that. It's ongoing problem, and it hits everywhere. I guess another one of those stories. I never thought it could happen here. It can happen anywhere. Yeah, guns are everywhere, and sometimes it happens more often when we're swimming in guns than when we're not.
Mm-hmm. It does.
All right.
Which reminds me of, if there's anything that could be even remotely amusing about Kentucky, it's not amusing. It's disgusting. The White House sent out an email this morning, a release, from supposedly Jeff Sessions saying, Trump promised an end to American carnage. Promise delivered.
Oh. Yes, that would be a little ironic for...
And Trump has yet, of course, to comment on what happened in Kentucky yesterday.
Right. Yeah, well, timing, guys. But they weren't thinking about it, and they weren't thinking about it because it was just another school shooting that didn't really register. And amazingly, it goes without comment.
They don't even get thoughts and prayers anymore.
Right, that's true. Well, we did tell them we were tired of hearing that, and so they said, that's fine. I wasn't really praying anyway, so we'll just stop.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've reached that stage, I guess. So
instead of tweeting out thoughts and prayers last night, Trump was tweeting out about crying Chuck Schumer.
Yes, he loves to try to come up with nicknames for everybody.
Yeah.
So,
and we remember what Chuck Schumer was crying about, right? Where he got that nickname from him?
You know what?
Seeing the footage of Schumer at a Holocaust anniversary memorial. Talking about his dead ancestors who died in a concentration camp.
He really, he's a sensitive guy. Yeah. That Donald Trump. Spankin' Donald Trump. That's what you call him, I guess.
So, crying Chuck Schumer fully understands, especially after his humiliating defeat, that if there is no wall, there is no DACA. We must have safety and security together with strong military for our great people. And we can lead with this into our next shutdown talk.
Okay.
Because we just have 2.5 weeks now, and nobody seems to be talking to anybody.
Right. Well, that won't happen until the day before.
Right. But the administration has already ruled out anything that's in the bipartisan plan that Jeff Flake and Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin have been working on.
Anything that's in it, like, no matter what it is, if it's in that plan, we're not going to do it?
It's got to have the wall. It's got to have the diversity visa lottery program and family-based immigration, and it's got to have the wall. So, and increased border security funding. So it has to have every element of the white nationalist Make America White Again plan that Stephen Miller has been pushing.
It's got to have the wall and border security because they're different.
Yeah. And, all Trump wants is his wall. Really. Okay. If it were just Trump, give him a few billion, give him his windows and his solar panels and whatever.
Yeah, where's he going to get the solar panels now? I understand he just put a big tariff on importing solar panels. So I mean, it wouldn't be an awful thing if they were American-made solar panels on top of the wall, but I bet he won't mandate that either. But China's solar panels are pretty good. Delicious cake.
You could build a Potemkin wall, take him to it, show it to him, say, look, we did it.
Yeah.
It only has to be quarter of a mile long, if that, he'd be fine.
Yeah.
Just do that. Just give him something. Give him some kind of wall.
I mean, as long as it's longer than he can walk, and that's like,
but as long as he's got Stephen Miller whispering in his ear.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well,
Tom Cotton in the Senate. And Steve King in the House. I mean, seriously, the Freedom Caucus is running everything right now.
Yeah. So it appears they're the ones tacking everything on top of that. You're probably right that all he's really interested in is the wall, and everybody else is saying, "Oh yeah, but you mean the wall and additional border money and whatever else we can come up with, whatever our wish list is." Now that's all got to be in there, and he's willing to say, "Oh yeah, right, that stuff."
Yeah. Well, we saw that already in the bipartisan meeting that they had to prove that he wasn't losing his mind. When he agreed with Senator Feinstein that, oh yeah, sure, we've got to do that. We've got to do that clean dreamer bill.
Whatever it is, we'll do it. Oh, wait.
Sure, we'll do that.
No, we don't like that. Oh, we don't like that. Yeah. Well, that's how you find these things out, I guess. You got to have a meeting so that he blurts something out and somebody else later on forces him to retract it.
Well, no, it was Kevin McCarthy right there saying, no, Mr. President, that's not what we're talking about.
Yes, in this case, that's true. He was on hand to say, no, bad president. Don't say those things. Well, okay, so, what's our date then for the next shutdown date is February, what's the number on it? 8th. Okay, so have they picked a Friday again, by the way? They don't need to do that.
I think it's probably a Friday, and, why can't they just stipulate noon instead of midnight?
That's another thing, too. They could.
They could.
I don't see why not. I guess they're just, they pick a date, and they're like, well, nothing we can do about when dates and days end. That's definitely midnight. But certainly you could rig it up with we'll put an extra $15 in or whatever to get us to noon, whatever it takes, and you could rig it that way, and so that at least people wouldn't have to stay up all night watching them either fail to come up with something or try and hash something out that could happen over lunch instead. But they are busy at lunchtime.
They are busy at lunchtime. It's a Thursday.
Oh, well, that's something.
Yeah. That's new.
Smart.
That's changing it up a little.
Yeah. That gives them an extra day to work on. I assume they'll squander that day, but it's better than naming the 9th and finding themselves there at midnight and then again on the 10th. That's progress. I mean, you could move it to a Monday for that matter, but baby steps.
Baby steps. Thursday's better than Friday, a little.
Yes. Baby hands, baby steps, all baby things. But that's a good move, I would say. What other things have we looming here? Greg was mentioning, we talked briefly about the renewed push, at least in Donald Trump's own mind, for elimination of the legislative filibuster, finding some support in some corners of the Senate, but not much.
No, I think that's probably the last thing that you're going to get consensus in the Republican caucus for with Trump as president.
Well, that may be, yeah.
Even with John McCain out. I don't see it happening, but predictably, of course, that's where Donald Trump went, and that's where the Freedom Caucus went during the shutdown. If we just got rid of that, Donald Trump's math problem again, missing the point that he didn't even have full Republican support on the CR.
Well, he might, after that, then say, we need to move to a 40-vote Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? We can do it just so long as they're my 40 votes. Okay, we'll do 40 votes because we've got that. Oh, no. If it gets 40 Republican votes, it should pass. That should be in the Constitution.
I don't see a lot of support for filibuster reform, particularly now. I mean, 2018 is just a little iffy. It's not likely that the Senate will overturn, but it could. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
That's true. And I guess it's, well, we ought to think about whether or not, well, we'll see who would benefit from such a move. I guess while Donald Trump is president, maybe just not time to discuss it necessarily. But
there are too many fires to be putting out, I think, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And lots of work to be done, certainly handling what's already been damaged, no matter who remains or who gets the majority next time around. We're up against our next break here. We'll just take a short one, and that could give us a moment between you and me to organize thoughts, come back, and present a coherent program for the folks on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
Coherent?
We'll try our best.
We'll try.
That's work. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Good morning and welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is still with me. We have spent our break casting about for something coherent and interesting, well, coming to the conclusion that it's just in the fog of the shutdown, and of course the fact that there's no actual Republican agenda. It's difficult to really put your finger on what is happening and might be happening next, other than running around. They know they should be working on something to avoid a shutdown, but Susan Collins' talking stick got broken or something, so they don't know what to do. The glass elephant got broken.
The glass elephant. And, if I could only talk when I was holding a stupid stick, I'd probably throw it too.
Right.
And if I was in Susan Collins' office and she had a glass elephant, yeah.
I am deeply concerned about all of that, as is she. But yeah, you're right. There's, you remarked to me, there's not a whole lot of consequence happening.
Very interesting tidbit for you in nomination.
Oh,
You're going to love this.
Oh boy. Okay.
David Vitter's wife is being nominated for a judgeship.
Wow. Far away from where David is now, or nearby?
No idea. That's all I saw about it. I didn't have a chance to follow up.
Nominated to the International Court of Justice. I'm leaving. That's good. That's interesting. So Vitter should be done with the Vitter family, but maybe she needed some kind of a payback. I don't know. What makes that happen?
I don't know what makes that happen. What has she done? I guess she's an attorney.
Yeah, well, who knows? I guess Armando wants to know what her view is on legalizing prostitution. That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
And a fair one at that.
Let's see. A seat on the Western District of Louisiana Federal Court.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. She's the general counsel of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans. So there you go.
Okay. It's funny that should be the case, because I was just going to bring up Gingrich's wife being nominated. She's the ambassador to
the Vatican.
To the Vatican, yes. The Holy See. Holy See! I can't believe it. She made it to the Vatican, but I don't know what it is about the wives thing, and maybe it's just the extra income. I don't know. So is she an attorney? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe she's a paranormal researcher. No one can be sure. But
she actually has.
She deserves to be happy. Maybe.
She does have a legal career behind her.
Good. General counsel.
She's even litigated jury trials. So.
She should be on the circuit court.
She's got a leg up on most of the other nominees.
Right.
Except, General Counsel of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans. So,
well, they have a lot of work to do. A lot of legal issues for the most archdioceses. I don't know how bad New Orleans has been in terms of litigation, but I assume they have their issues. Let's hope it's limited to people who slipped on the slick sidewalk outside of a church or something like that. Okay.
Probably has a lot more to do with abortion when she's on the federal judiciary.
Yes, I would imagine so. Yeah. Okay, well, and I guess it's important to somebody to keep Vitter's wife busy, happy. Vitter happy. Is Vitter? What is he doing?
That's a very good question.
I don't know. That's a well. I'll research that perhaps at some point. Not necessary for us to take up time with it now, but I am curious. I wonder if he's in Washington lobbying.
He must be.
And she's just like, good, keep him there.
They do.
Yeah, there's not much else. I don't think that was available to him, but who knows? He got a standing ovation when he came back to the Senate, so I don't know what to make of it. I'm checking out his. Maybe Wikipedia knows what he's been doing. But all right, well, that's where did you hear the news of that? Just floating around on.
Just floating around. I keep an eye on all of the nomination stuff.
Yes. Okay.
Because
she goes by Vitter, eh?
She goes by Vitter, Wendy Vitter.
Oh yes, that's right.
She's still married to him.
She still goes by Wendy as well, because that was part of their issue. There was I think the other woman he was seeing professionally, I guess, was either also named Wendy or just willing to say her name was Wendy in exchange for cash. I'm not certain whether it really was, but okay.
She was Wendy too?
Yeah, that created some issues. You're seeing another woman? Yes and no. It's a prostitute. Oh, well, okay. So the
named Wendy. Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, that's some news. Okay, so there was a nomination just made recently, or?
Yes, yesterday.
Okay. Well, phew. I guess she's happy.
I hope so. I hope so. So that happened.
Yeah. And let's see.
I'm back to the Yellowstone caldera.
There's not that much happening. There's they'll be preoccupied.
It's the weight of every little thing and all of the big things that come every single news day.
Yeah. Right.
It's 8:30 on a Wednesday morning, and I've already had a whole week, a month.
Yes. Well, they are coming fast and furious here, these crazy stories. Let's see. I mean,
I think we could, stay on the judiciary and talk about Neil Gorsuch having dinner with Lamar Alexander and John Cornyn and Elaine Chao. And chances are, if Elaine Chao was there,
Chao too, eh?
Yeah. If she was there, chances are pretty good her husband would be there too.
How would that not make the reporting?
Well, it was a tweet.
Oh.
From Lamar Alexander.
A tweet from Lamar.
Yeah. And we haven't seen more reporting on exactly who attended this private dinner, besides Neil Gorsuch, where they talked about the issues of the day. The issues of that day was the government shutdown over DREAM Act. The next morning, the Supreme Court granted expedited cert to consider the Trump administration's appeal of the DACA injunction.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, so surely they are informing his position on these things. He doesn't entertain hypotheticals, as we know. So they must have been talking about the actual case. That is interesting. I wonder how often that happens and we don't find out about it, either via Twitter or just in the past. I imagine.
Probably, it's not supposed to. Any interaction between Supreme Court justices and politicians is supposed to be completely social.
Yes.
You can talk about the kids, you can talk about the grandkids, you can talk about baseball, you can talk about the weather.
So it's unusual that anybody would admit that it was a discussion of the issues of the day.
Yeah.
That's the new part.
And a problem that he's announcing, here's Gorsuch meeting with Senate Republican leadership, even if McConnell wasn't there, while his wife was, Cornyn was there.
Yes. It's some collection for dinner.
Yeah.
Who was hosting the dinner?
I think it was Cornyn.
Cornyn? Okay. Well, then no wonder he was there. I should assume he would be there. So it was his idea putting this list together. We're finding out about some weird dinners taking place these days.
Yes. Well, Gorsuch has not been shy at all about being overtly political. I mean, he's giving speeches at Trump's hotel.
Yes, that's true. Well, I mean, I guess he figures he's tagged with the, he's wearing the political tag anyway, so he might as well do what he wants. He's only there because of a political power play, and he knows it, so I guess it doesn't upset the balance of things. Everyone realizes that he's a political justice. But for everyone else...
It can't sit particularly well with John Roberts.
You would think, but maybe he's more political than we think, too.
It's entirely possible. We know that Gorsuch was a disruptive and annoying force on the court.
Yes.
For his first session, that they all pretty much came out of it disliking him intensely, if you read between the lines. Since they were willing to actually talk about it to a reporter.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, that might not happen.
No.
Okay, so he was an irritant from the beginning. I have a question.
Which is hardly a surprise. You have a question?
Yes, as I'm sort of leading off of the judiciary considerations. I haven't had the chance to look very far into it, but what was I read that there was a provision in the House version of the CR, or was it was the one that finally passed?
Being busy.
Okay, please fill me in on that.
The intelligence community stuff, right?
Yes.
Yes. So for the next 3 weeks, and however long this lasts, because this got passed, I guess it expires on February 8th, so no. For the next 3 weeks,
okay, the
Trump administration and the intelligence community get to decide how they spend the money appropriated for them. They can't spend it on programs not authorized by Congress, and they don't even have to notify Congress that they are spending the money on operations that they see fit.
Wow, that feels wrong.
It feels extremely wrong. It wasn't wrong enough even after Senator Burr and Senator Warner found out about it to make them say no. They tried to get it taken out. It wasn't taken out. The administration says, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. But Mick Mulvaney got it inserted for some reason. And that should be worrying a bit.
Yeah. I mean, but it only applies to this funding in this 3 weeks? I mean, I assume they'll try and have it in the next...
Oh, I'm sure they'll try to have it next, and I don't think it'll fly now because Burr really is surprisingly serious about being chair of the Intelligence Committee.
Well, this is the one big power, in addition to holding hearings on very splashy issues, is being able to supervise and decide what intelligence programs would be authorized and to what extent they'll be authorized, and that's an enormous thing, and it takes it away from him entirely.
Yeah, but beyond that, I'm kind of surprised. You don't get a lot of leaks from the IC's investigation into the Trump-Russia stuff. They're working pretty diligently. You don't see the kind of politicization out of it that you're seeing from Grassley and Judiciary. It seems that they just sort of have their head down and are working this. And I'm a little surprised, happily surprised. Not that I have great hopes that Burr's going to do something remarkable, but he seems to be taking this pretty seriously.
Well, even outside this context.
And perhaps because he's taking this seriously, he's really, really upset that this provision got put into the continuing resolution.
It's an odd one in that I guess I'm surprised that Mulvaney thought to do it. I mean, if he was the prime mover, it may have been suggested to him by someone else.
I'm sure, yeah, that he was doing somebody else's bidding on this. But it came from OMB. They were the ones who put it in there, who got House Republicans to put it in there.
And I guess it's just surprising that, I mean, the optics of it, of course, are horrific. I mean, given that, but also given that Trump has been doing so much complaining about an out of control, rogue element or secret societies among law enforcement and the intelligence community, both of which he assumes are plotting at some level against him. And then to
yeah, the timing of it's kind of creepy.
I mean, my guess is that, my initial guess would be that it's less about programming funds to pursue aggressive new expansions of surveillance powers than it is about, well, I want the unilateral ability to move funding around there and doing things like defunding things. Yeah. I don't want any payments for anything that might lead to the validation of the Steele dossier or fund any positions in government that are working on it.
Yeah.
Not to mention, of course, I guess he could launch an aggressive.
He already got the surveillance power expansion, by the way.
Yeah. The traditional one that they've been after for a long time, but
yeah.
I suppose now he could say, well, all right, I'll use some of this funding for extrajudicial surveillance outside the FISA structure, strictly surveilling my political enemies and infiltrating their organizations. I guess you could do that, but
he only has 3 weeks to do it. Luckily,
3 weeks is a little short notice.
Luckily,
right?
And since we found out that it was in there, I have a hard time seeing it passing again. But that's really creepy.
It is. It calls a lot into question. I guess my other assumption would be that they hoped to slip it in, not have anyone notice because they're focusing on other things, and then because it's in the one we just did, just take this whole section and copy it into the new one.
Yeah.
As opposed to there's something I want to do in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That might not really be the case. They just got to get it inserted somewhere. Well, hopefully they've stepped in it and will lose their ability to carry that over because Burr is upset, and he should be, rightly so. I imagine
House Intelligence was unhappy as well, I should say.
Yeah.
It didn't come from them.
No?
They didn't
okay.
this.
It did happen on the House side, but
yeah.
So there's another question. Like, somebody has to take a call from Mick Mulvaney. He doesn't get to sneak in and scribble it in the margins himself.
He might. He was
maybe
he was one of them a year
true.
ago.
Yeah, and we just did learn that they apparently have no idea or no interest in who's walking in and out of the White House.
Right.
So they might have no interest in Congress either. Well, I'm always puzzled by the inability to track changes on stuff like this. They insist they just don't keep that sort of record, who puts what in. And it's out there. It's just we need maybe we need body cams for Congress.
Maybe we do. They didn't just pluck it out of the ether.
Right. So we'd like to, maybe phone records would tell us, but okay, well, that's something to keep an eye on, and hopefully they will jealously guard their prerogatives as they're supposed to do, both Burr and I assume you're the usual suspects, Rand Paul raging into a paper bag somewhere about this?
You don't know.
No? Why
No.
not? What is he up to? Somebody beat him up again?
I don't know. He got distracted by something else. I mean, he was already a no on the CR.
Okay.
Because he just is.
But you would think that would be fuel for his fire.
You would.
Mike Lee? Nothing yet?
Not a peep. Not
Okay.
a peep.
Well, there is a lot going on in a short time frame, and I imagine if it were to stay in there that maybe they would pipe up. But it's interesting that they're not leading on it, or that Burr isn't seeking their alliance on it.
Not that we're aware of.
Yeah, he may just have
And
it
that
in
could
pocket.
be happening. That could be happening behind the scenes. We're not seeing really anything that's happening publicly yet on negotiating for the next government shutdown. Just the White House saying, no, you can't have DACA unless we have the wall and all of the other conditions. And Schumer saying, sorry.
Yeah,
my
I did
offer
see
of
that.
the wall's off the table.
Now that was put on and off again.
That's the only public negotiating that we've seen, and it's not negotiating. It's, of course, drawing lines in the sand.
Okay.
So, I don't know who's talking to whom, if anybody's talking to anybody.
Yes.
But they have 3 weeks,
Right. So that
do it 2.5 weeks from now.
basically, they almost always do leave it to the last minute, although occasionally we find out that a gang has formed and started talking in the meantime. They usually are the ones who propose that thing which isn't going to be allowed to the floor, but which exists, and everybody...
Which at this point is the only thing that can pass.
Yeah. It must be awfully frustrating, and I guess maybe that leads to stories about, like, for instance, Joe Manchin wanting out. It must be enormously frustrating to bang your head against the wall, come up with solutions, not always things that we would be happy with, but that appear to have the votes. And it must occur to you once in a while, how come I can't get a vote here? I'm a senator. When am I going to get to do a vote on a thing that I like? When is
Not while Mitch McConnell's in charge.
No, not likely. We did note the other day that someone had, and I think it was Sheldon Whitehouse, had pointed out that there hadn't been a vote on a Democratic amendment besides a Votorama amendment, basically pro forma. Here, you have 5 minutes to defeat this amendment, but no substantive consideration of a single Democratic amendment in all of 2017 on the Senate floor.
Yep.
That's pretty astounding. I don't believe that's happened before.
And on the 2 major things that they tried to get through last year.
Yeah.
Taxes and Trump care.
Right.
No hearings.
Also true.
No public testimony. No markup.
So no surprise, then, that they're really doing nothing at the moment. No public record or indication in any way that anything's happening, and it's probably because, well, half the Senate body says, what's the point? I don't know. I mean, I'll lay out my positions and I'll put them on my website, and they'll be rejected. But we have to wait for these clowns to come up with something, and all it's going to be is the wall and hairspray. This is not even worth considering.
Turns out Mitch McConnell's as much an authoritarian as Donald Trump.
Well, he likes being in charge, I guess.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay. So all we can expect then is a ticking down of the shutdown clock.
Yeah. I do have to say that at least there's 6 years of CHIP funding now.
Yes.
That crisis is over. There's another one. There are more hostages. The 27 million people who get health care through community health centers. Because that didn't get funded.
Oh.
So.
Yes, it's also not so good.
That and the Dreamer kids is still, there are still very human hostages the Republicans have taken.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm curious to see whether anybody's strategy is to take care of this comprehensively or to have one shutdown at a time and settle one issue each time around. I wonder whether Republicans, now that they're attempting to take a victory lap on all this, does this translate into, does Donald Trump come out of this saying, I want to have a shutdown every time? We should do this over and over again. 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. We'll just keep winning, in his view. I wonder. Or does he want it out of the way? I don't know. There's no ambitious agenda yet to come.
Oh, it's infrastructure week.
Is it? Again?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did he actually tweet something? This is amazing.
Axios got their hands on the infrastructure draft plan.
Oh, well, somebody should have it.
And the thing that I noticed most was that we're privatizing water. Because that always works.
Yeah. Everyone loves privatized water. Okay. Well, we'll have to... That'll be something we'll have to pick up and take a look at. When are they... So what does it even mean now, Infrastructure Week? Is somebody going to have a meeting at the White House, or is there going to be a hearing?
Infrastructure Week, David.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. They should... I guess that's the thing to do.
They have a plan now in draft form. That's all I know.
Good. Okay. Well, we can build a giant archive and fill it with the tweets announcing various infrastructure weeks. I guess there should be several dozen of them. I guess I'm glad they're coming back to that. It's important and everything, but clearly they're not doing anything that you and I would think of as infrastructure. Like, could you make it easier for us to commute to work and not have this bridge collapse? Well, I was thinking about privatized water first.
Yeah.
You put a nickel in a water fountain and wait. Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to take a look at that one. I guess we're bumping up against our time limit for today, but I guess they can occupy one. Well, they could have 2 infrastructure weeks. That is allowed. Of the 3 that are coming up.
Well, we've had 50. How many? Maybe it's more like 45 at this point.
Could be. Does this mean are they bringing big trucks to the White House again? That's what I want to know.
Well, not before he gets back from Davos.
Oh, right. Is he? He's on. Oh, that's something I forgot to check in on. Is he en route today? Is that?
I hope
why he's
so.
Quiet? It's good when he's out of the country. Honestly,
it is good. And the avalanche danger in Davos, by the way, is extremely high this week.
Oh, well,
it's 5 out of 5. They have a 1 to 5 scale. It's 5.
All right,
just saying.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Avalanche. We haven't had one of those in the news lately.
Yes. There was one in Japan.
Okay.
The same day as the Sunday night, Monday morning.
Oh, along with the earthquake.
Along with the Alaska earthquake.
Yeah. Apparently, I guess the Pacific Rim as a whole just
is getting tired of Trump.
That may be. So, well, come on, Switzerland. Not, yeah, that'd make a hell of a headline. I will say that. If
it would indeed. I'm just waiting for the sinkhole under Mar-a-Lago.
That's inevitable. So I suppose that's coming.
It's Florida.
Yeah.
Florida is tweakers, gators, and sinkholes, right?
Yeah. And
I'm sure there are fine people there.
Yes, lots. Leave now is what we're telling you. But I understood. Well, now I guess I don't understand. I'm confused about Trump's position on what Ryan Zinke did in terms of exempting Florida. I read, just briefly, that he was upset with Zinke somehow for issuing this.
Because Zinke didn't tell him he was doing it.
But it was like a present to you.
I know.
Sir,
I know. That's
very weird. All right, well, he's a hot-tempered guy. I think maybe they... by the way, where should they not be fracking? Sinkhole, Florida. But,
yeah.
So it was probably a good idea. But by all means, go ahead. And maybe that'll be the end of it. If the avalanche doesn't get him, the sinkhole should. Thank you for telling me about that. I have hope now. Thank you, Joan.
That's what I'm here for, Kagro.
Yes. Ending on a good note. Okay. Well, let's get ready then to hand the microphones back over to Justice Putnam for his program. Thank you very much for coming by and sorting through the dearth of news today.
You are most welcome.
Thank you. We always depend on you to help us navigate that, and we'll do it again next week.
Absolutely. When we still don't have a shutdown plan.
But we'll have 1.5 weeks to work on. Excellent. We can count it down. Thanks again, Joan. Joan McCarter, our senior political writer. Thanks, and we'll talk again. And, I better get started on what's happening on the next program. So let me pull up the communique from Justice here and let you know about what's coming up on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Coming up next right after our show, starting off in their Bistro Cafe. Sounds very appetizing. Rapidly breaking news reveals the Mueller investigation is at an inflection point. That's good. I'd like to find out what that is, so maybe I'll tune in with the rest of you. On the rest of the menu, Mick Mulvaney's Consumer Protection Bureau, remember he's got 2 jobs, dropped a probe into a payday lender that donated to his campaigns. Gee whiz, I wonder who did he do that. Multi-billion-dollar U.S. corporation Kimberly-Clark used Trump's tax scam bill to kill over 5,000 jobs. Thanks for those tax cuts. And Trump's embrace of hatred and bigotry has tourists shunning America and costing the country billions.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
There's more. After his break, he moves to the shelf's table. Why? I'll tell you why. To analyze why nothing is more fashionable these days on the Republican right than to trash America's law enforcement and intelligence services. It all comes back in a big round circle here on our Netroots Radio program. Big day. We'll see you tomorrow.